like you. Be strong to hold the powers of the sun. To dream, believe in strength. Now I'm the only one.
Welcome back to NA DIORPOP. Tonight, we're not just talking about a flight from Portugal to Korea. We're talking about what happens in the quiet moments between schedules, when the cameras dim, the lights soften, and the world finally goes silent. Because somewhere above the clouds, at 30,000 feet in the air, there were glances that lasted a second too long, hands that reached instinctively, and gestures so small, yet so full of meaning. This isn't about headlines. This isn't about speculation. This is about the kind of romance that lives in silence. Let's step inside that plane and relive the moments between Jimin and Jungkook that felt softer than the night sky outside their window. Among all the grand moments BTS have lived through, the roaring stadiums, the flashing lights, the overwhelming cheers, there is one kind of moment that always feels the most honest, the quiet ones, the in-between spaces, the hours when the world slows down and there are no cameras demanding a smile. The flight home from Portugal to Korea wasn't just a long international journey. It was a return after days filled with energy, performances, and emotions running high. And somewhere inside that dimly lit aircraft cabin, high above the clouds, there were small, almost invisible moments between Jimin and Jungkook that felt more intimate than any stage performance ever could. When the plane finally took off, leaving behind the warm skies of Portugal, the members settled into their seats. Hoodies up, masks on, trying to reclaim a bit of privacy. The adrenaline from their schedules had faded into exhaustion. It was the kind of tired that settles deep into your bones. Jimin sat not too far from Jungkook, close enough to sense each other's presence, but casual enough not to draw attention. At first, everything looked ordinary. Jungkook put on his headphones, scrolling through his playlist. Jimin adjusted the thin airline blanket over his legs and leaned back in his seat. But with them, even ordinary has meaning. After the plane reached cruising altitude and the cabin lights dimmed, Jungkook slowly removed his headphones. He turned his head slightly toward Jimin. No words were exchanged. Just a look. A quiet check-in. Are you okay? Jimin caught the glance and gave him a small nod, lips curving into a soft smile. Not a stage smile. Not the one crafted for cameras. This was the smile that appears when someone feels safe. Hours passed. The low hum of the engines filled the silence. Some members were already asleep. The cabin felt suspended in time. Then Jungkook noticed something small. Jimin's shoulder had slipped out from under the blanket. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't urgent. But Jungkook reached for his own spare blanket and gently draped it over Jimin's shoulder. The movement was careful, almost protective. Jimin's eyes fluttered open. He hadn't been fully asleep. When he realized what Jungkook had done, he looked at him quietly. "Thank you," he whispered, barely audible. Jungkook just shrugged lightly, offering that warm, familiar smile, the one that always seemed softer when it was meant for Jimin. Later, when the flight attendants handed out snacks, Jungkook accepted 2 small packs. Without hesitation, he handed one directly to Jimin first. Jimin let out a quiet laugh. "Why is it always me first?" Jungkook's answer came naturally. "Because you forget to eat." It was such a simple sentence. But inside it lived years of knowing each other's habits, weaknesses, and silent struggles. It wasn't staged affection. It was routine care. As the hours stretched deeper into the night, exhaustion finally claimed Jimin. His head tilted slightly to the side. And slowly, almost unconsciously, he leaned toward Jungkook. Jungkook froze for a moment. He could have adjusted, could have shifted away. But he didn't. Instead, he straightened his posture just enough so Jimin's head could rest more comfortably on his shoulder. His hand hovered for a second before settling gently near Jimin's arm, close enough to steady him if needed. There was nothing dramatic about it. No grand declarations. Just 2 people sitting side by side, thousands of feet above the earth, becoming each other's quiet place to rest. Sometimes romance isn't about fireworks. Sometimes it's about choosing not to move so someone you care about can sleep peacefully. A few times during the flight, Jungkook glanced down at Jimin's sleeping face. There was something reflective in his eyes. Maybe he was remembering their trainee days. The late nights. The fears. The tears no one saw. The way they had grown up side by side. Then, suddenly, light turbulence shook the cabin. Jimin stirred awake, slightly disoriented. Instinctively, his hand searched for stability. Before he even realized it, Jungkook's hand was already there. Their fingers brushed. Jungkook gently squeezed his hand, just once. No cameras zoomed in on that moment. No live stream captured it. But it was real. Honest. Unfiltered. The journey from Portugal to Korea felt endless. But within that aircraft, time seemed different for them. Wrapped in dim light and quiet breathing, there was an unspoken understanding that didn't need explanation. As dawn began to peek through the windows, soft golden light spilled across the cabin. This time, Jimin woke first. He noticed Jungkook still asleep, head slightly tilted, looking younger and softer in the early sunlight. For a moment, Jimin simply watched him. A small, affectionate smile formed on his lips. Carefully, Jimin pulled his hoodie up and gently adjusted it around Jungkook's neck so he wouldn't get cold. A silent return of care. When Jungkook eventually opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Jimin pretending to scroll on his phone. Jungkook chuckled softly when he noticed the hoodie. "You too," he murmured. Jimin looked over. "What? You forget you're tired too." Their eyes met. And in that gaze was something difficult to define. Something that didn't need public acknowledgement. Something built over years of shared rooms, shared dreams, shared fears. When the plane finally landed in Korea, reality rushed back in. Masks adjusted. Hoodies fixed. The outside world waited. Cameras, schedules, expectations. But before they stood up, Jungkook leaned slightly toward Jimin. "Let's go home," he said quietly. Not just home as in a building, but home as in a feeling. Home as in the person who sits beside you even at 30,000 feet in the air. Jimin nodded softly. "Yeah. Home." And maybe that's what made those moments so romantic. Not the headlines. Not the speculation. Not the spotlight. But the blanket pulled a little higher. The shoulder that stayed still. The hand that reached first during turbulence. Romance doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply stays. And somewhere between Portugal and Korea, inside a quiet aircraft cabin suspended above the clouds, Jimin and Jungkook reminded us that love, whatever form it takes, can live beautifully in the smallest gestures. As they stepped back into the spotlight, Jimin and Jungkook wore their usual calm expressions. Professionals. Idols. Global stars. But somewhere between the clouds and the sunrise, they were simply two people who had learned how to be each other's comfort. And maybe that's what makes moments like these unforgettable. Not because the world saw them, but because even in silence, they meant everything. This has been NA DIORPOP, where we don't just watch the moments, we feel them. Dizzy.